Greetings, traveller. It is I, Alex, the Bookubus. And yes, I am getting in the Garth Marenghi style, representing with my Garth Marenghi's Dark Place t-shirt, because one of the books I read this month was the new book by the Dreamweaver himself. And yeah, this video is not just about that book, although that is the most important thing, let's face it, but this is going to be my March reading wrap up. And I read 7 books in total, mostly horror, but yeah, 1 or 2 other things as well. And the first book that I read in March, and my favourite book of the month, it probably comes as no surprise that it is Garth Marenghi's Teratome. I pre-ordered this. I pre-ordered a signed copy like sometime last year, and it has been out for a while, but I only just got this at the beginning of March. It's kind of a long story. I won't go into all of it, but basically it kind of got lost in the mail and was like just sitting in limbo for months. And I had pretty much given up hope that I was ever actually going to get my hands on it. And then one day, randomly, it just turned up. So that was very exciting. And I'm very happy that it did because, yeah, like I say, it is a signed copy, holding it very carefully because it is now a very prized possession. But yeah, this was everything I wanted and more. It really was fantastic. It exceeded my expectations, I'll be honest. I thought it was going to be fun, but there were times when I was reading this that I was just absolutely dying. So it was really, really great. Anyway, so what even is this? If you are not familiar with Garth Marenghi, then I suggest you do your homework. Call yourself a horror fan. But yeah, I highly suggest you go look up Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. That is the best place to start. And that was a show that is just one of my favourite things to ever exist ever. And yeah, when the book Teratome was announced, I was just beside myself with excitement. So yeah, the fact that this actually exceeded my expectations was, yeah, such a treat. Basically, this is the best and worst of 80s horror fiction in one book. There are 3 stories in here that do tie together, and it was just such a good time. And not only did I get the physical copy, but I also got the audiobook because it is narrated by the visionary himself, Garth Marenghi, and I listened to the audiobook and read the physical book at the same time, just for that full-on immersive experience. And I'm really glad I did that because it was so much fun. And yeah, the audiobook is just really exceptional. They did such a good job with it. And yeah, there were times that I was laughing so much at parts of this book that I was crying. I couldn't breathe. I literally had to stop the audiobook to like just take a moment and get it all out of my system before I carried on with the story. And yeah, my husband is like, "Are you okay?" So yeah, it was just such a good time. I had such a good time with this book and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. It is one of my favourite books of the year and I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen Dark Place, I think I would start with Dark Place and then get the book. I think Dark Place sets the tone well, and then you'll know what to expect with Teratome. And it was just announced the other day that there is going to be another Garth Marenghi book coming out later this year. I believe the release date is Halloween, October the 31st. So I definitely need to pre-order myself a copy of that, and I can't wait. Yeah, I will say I did kind of have a quick look at some reviews of this. I just kind of scanned through, and I think the main reason that some people didn't like it as much is because they thought it was, you know, the joke was just kind of one note and it was drawn out too long. I definitely didn't think so. I thought it worked throughout the book and there was just so many elements of it that were so well done. And you know, it's difficult to write anything anyway, but I think especially when you're trying to emulate a certain thing and you are, you know, it's a parody of sorts, but you really have to know that subject matter in order to riff on it. And then also, you know, there's the fact of actually making it funny as well. So there are so many elements going on here that I really do think there's a lot of talent that went into it. And I think the end result was just absolutely marvellous. So yes, 5 stars from me without a doubt. Garth Marenghi's Teratome. Go get it. Okay, next up I read, should I keep the glasses on? Should I take the glasses off? No, I should probably cover up more of my face because I look better that way. So yes, next up I read Hobgoblin by John Coyne. Obviously very inferior writer to Mr. Marenghi, you know, no offence to Mr. Coyne, but it's just, that's just the way it is. But yeah, in seriousness, this was a really great book. This is one that I'd been meaning to read for ages. I mean, look at it. And also the title, it just, yeah, it screams something that I would want to read. Sorry about the glare there, but yeah, it's got this really great step back art. And this is about a kid who is obsessed with this kind of Dungeons and Dragons type of game called Hobgoblin. And I'm glad I finally picked this one up because I really enjoyed it. I did think it took quite a while to get going. There's quite a bit of setting the scene with the main character Scott and his mother and his like family life, home life, that whole backstory there. And then their current situation, basically his mother is working at this castle that it was imported like brick by brick from Ireland many years ago, and this eccentric guy lived there. And now it's like, you know, a historic place that there are a bunch of people working in there and it's open to the public to, you know, look around, that kind of thing. So yeah, Scott's mother is working there and she and Scott live in a house like on the grounds. So the castle and the goings on in the castle and the history of the castle play a big role in the story too. And yeah, there are some secrets of the past that are brought up during the story. So it's not just about this Hobgoblin game, it's also about, yeah, the history of this castle and stuff. Yeah, I thought those two kind of major elements of the story worked really well together, and I really did like how it all climaxed towards the end. And yeah, there is basically like a Halloween party at the end, so if you're looking for a thematic read for Halloween, you could go with this one. Yeah, it's a kind of a, you know, it's more of a quiet, slow burn, but it had some really great moments in here, and I thought the characters were well done. So yeah, this was my first time reading this author. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I look forward to reading more by him. Okay, next up I read The Remaking by McLeod Chapman. This came out a few years ago and it's one I remember being intrigued about at the time and have been meaning to read since. So I finally borrowed a copy from the library. So the story starts off in the 1930s when in this small town this woman and her daughter were persecuted for being witches and they were killed. And this story then turned into like an urban legend over the years, and in the 70s it was turned into a horror film. And then in the 90s that film is being remade, and yeah, basically one of the main characters here is the actress who played the little girl in the 70s movie, and we're following her into the 90s as the film is being remade, and she is brought in, you know, as a cameo, and then, you know, and then the story goes on from there as well. Yeah, I think the concept of this one is really fantastic. It's super intriguing. You know, I love that idea of, yeah, storytelling and the continuation of those stories and how they morph over time. And yeah, obviously, as a big horror film fan, I really like the idea of, yeah, the inclusion of that, about a story being made into a movie and then that being remade. And yeah, there's just a lot of, you know, meta stuff going on. So yeah, really like the premise. And I did enjoy the book. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was good, but unfortunately, I didn't think it was great. It didn't quite live up to the premise for me, I think. One of the reasons was the main character, and we kind of get to know her quite a bit in the 90s section. So she's now an adult, and she had starred in this horror film back in the 70s, and, you know, that has kind of haunted her ever since. And I just didn't think she was very likeable, very sympathetic, and, you know, not that I don't enjoy reading unlikable characters from time to time. They can be some of the most interesting ones, but this one, she just wasn't likeable. She wasn't interesting either. So yeah, I just found it difficult to get on board with her story and to really care about what happened, I think. And since she was such a big element of the story, yeah, that definitely affected my ability to really care about what was going on and to really get invested and enjoy it. I do think there were a lot of interesting elements here, and yeah, commentary on, yeah, like I said, storytelling and horror films and remaking films, you know, that whole industry. But yeah, it just, I don't know, it didn't quite work for me overall. So I gave this one 3 stars. Like I say, I still thought it was good. It just, yeah, didn't quite live up to the premise for me. There are a couple of other books by this author that have come out since then. I think that Whisper Down the Lane and is it The Ghost Eaters? And they both sound really interesting too. So I would like to check them out at some point. Yeah, hopefully they do a bit better job at living up to their really interesting premises. We will see. If you read any of them, let me know. Next up, I read The Return by Rachel Harrison. And this is one I listened to on audiobook. I'm not much of an audiobook user, I'll be honest with you, but I definitely wanted to get the audio version of Teratome, and I had an extra credit on Audible, so I was like, well, I'd better use it, you know, use it or lose it, basically. And yeah, The Return was just one that I'd been meaning to check out for a while too, like the Remaking. So I figured, yeah, why not give the audio a go? Yeah, so one of the problems I have with audiobooks is sometimes I just don't get on with the narrator. And also sometimes I just find it isn't holding my attention fully, like, because normally you end up doing other things while you're listening to audiobooks, and then I'll just get distracted and be like, oh, I haven't been listening to that for the past 5 minutes. So yeah, that's, you know, a couple of reasons why I don't use them very often. But this was a really excellent audiobook. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story and I enjoyed the audiobook itself, the narration. And I just checked, this was narrated by Sara Scott. So excellent job. And this is about a group of 4 friends who have been friends for many years. And then one day, one of them, Julie, goes missing. And she is missing for 2 years, and then she suddenly turns back up again. And so it's a story of their past friendship and, yeah, the fact that, yeah, she'd been missing for all this time and is now back, and it's like things are the same but different, and she is the same but different. And yeah, so the friendship group is trying to get things back on track, and they decide to go away on a little holiday to spend some time, just the 4 of them. But yeah, of course, as you can imagine, things don't quite go to plan. And this is told from the perspective of one of the other women in the friend group, Elise. And yeah, I thought the narrator just did a really great job with the different voices of the 4 women. It did take me a minute to, yeah, get a handle on these 4 different characters and their voices. But yeah, once I did, I thought, yeah, she did a really great job with that. So, and I just found the story really captivating. So it was like I wanted to listen to it. And I found that it really did hold my attention when I was listening to it. So that was really great. I guess that this one kind of straddles that line between horror and thriller. I feel like some horror fans might feel it's a little bit too light on the horror, whereas I wouldn't necessarily class it as a thriller because it does kind of go to some places at times. But yeah, whatever it was, you know, category-wise, I thought it was really great. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and I had read one other book by this author, Cackle, which came out a year or 2 ago, and that was good. I thought it, you know, I enjoyed that one. That one's definitely much lighter on the horror elements. I thought this one had a bit more going on in that respect, so it was a bit more my cup of tea. But yeah, I just really liked the commentary on friendship and, yeah, getting older as a woman, and yeah, kind of trying to keep in touch with friends, and then yeah, just other things from your past coming back to haunt you, and yeah, you know, your life maybe not turning out quite the way you wanted it to. Can definitely relate. So yeah, I just, there were a lot of things here that I thought were really well done, and I really enjoyed the story. And yeah, it had some creepy moments as well. Yeah, trying to figure out exactly what was going on and where the story was going to go. I really didn't know. So yeah, I did enjoy the direction it took and where it ended up. But yeah, I thought this one was really good, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read a short story collection. This is A Small Light and Other Stories by Sara. This is published by Weird Punk Books, and I did receive this copy for review, but as always, these are my honest opinions, and I know I've enjoyed like everything else from Weird Punk that I've read, and this was no exception. This was another 4-star read for me. If I didn't like it, I really would say so politely, you know, but I would say so. But no, this was just another excellent book from them. They just are consistently putting out awesome stuff. So yeah. This one is very like female character focused and female relationship focused. So there's a mixture of like female friendships, you know, romantic and sexual female relationships, and also like mother-daughter relationships. So I really like that focus and that kind of, yeah, delving into those kind of relationships, which, you know, aren't all of the time good ones. You know, there are some, yeah, toxic relationships here, some, yeah, just some more negative aspects going on within these stories. I really enjoyed her writing style. Yeah, there's definitely like an eerie, ethereal, unsettling quality to the stories that are in this collection that I really enjoyed. Yeah, it's hard to say too much more about it because they are short stories, but I think, yeah, if you're interested in female-focused stories and, yeah, more of that more quiet but eerie and unsettling type of vibe, then I would highly recommend this. I was definitely impressed with the collection as a whole, and yeah, like I said, I gave it 4 stars, really enjoyed it, would definitely recommend it. Okay, next up I decided to squeeze in a point horror book. This one is Call Waiting by R.L. Stine, and yeah, this one was okay. Not my favourite one, but definitely not my least favourite. You know, it was good. I gave it 3 stars, and this is about a teenage girl, surprise, surprise, who is having some boyfriend trouble, and she is convinced that her boyfriend is wanting to go out with someone else and she doesn't want to lose him. And anyway, all of a sudden she starts getting these threatening phone calls that come through on the call waiting. And yeah, there's part of the story that was like very obvious really early on what was happening. So when it was actually revealed, it wasn't exactly much of a surprise. Yeah, this one was just okay. I think it felt, because I knew what was going on for a big portion of it, it didn't really have me as intrigued as it might have done otherwise. I wasn't as invested in it. And also the character isn't super likeable either, to be fair. I mean, she's fine, bless her. But yeah, she was just very possessive and kind of whiny over, yeah, the whole boyfriend thing. So anyway, like I say, this one was okay. It was good, you know, fell somewhere in the middle of my point horror experience. I gave it 3 stars. Okay, and then last up I read Mother Howl by Clevenger. This is a new release that comes out I think sometime in June, and I got an advance copy through NetGalley. I don't use NetGalley very often, but this is one that I was like, I need it. So that is because I've read a couple of other books by this author, The Contortionist's Handbook and Dermaphoria, both of which I absolutely loved back in the day. This was like, what, early 2000s? Yeah, I just checked. These came out 2002 and 2005. And this was an author who I got to know about through the Chuck Palahniuk forum, the cult, because I used to be on there. And yeah, there were a few authors that, yeah, would always come up in conversation and get recommended, and Craig Clevenger was one of them, and for very good reason. Those 2 books, I absolutely loved them. So when many years later he's coming out with a new novel, I was very excited. And I did really enjoy this one. I think maybe not quite as much as I remember loving his previous ones, but it was still excellent. He's a very talented author, and yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. So what is it about, Alex? Let me bring up the synopsis so I can give you yeah, a better gist of it, because it's kind of a difficult one to describe. So Goodreads describes it as a compelling literary crime that follows the son of a serial murderer who changes his identity in a bid to escape his past. So yeah, that's definitely one big facet of the story. So we're following this character Lyle. When he was a teenager, his father was found, yeah, basically was a serial killer and went to jail, and Lyle's life was, you know, completely uprooted because he was, yeah, you know, tarred with the same brush, basically. And the only way that he figured he could get through life would be to, yeah, change his name, move away, and just try to escape the past. So we are mostly following him at a later stage of his life. I think he's in his 30s. And yeah, is just kind of dealing with, still dealing with the ramifications of what happened and how that has affected his life over the years. And there's another element of the story which I won't go into specifics about, but it's more of a, I don't know, sci-fi, urban fantasy, maybe magical realism element. I'm not sure exactly how you would describe it, but yeah, there is another element of the story that comes in, and yeah, the kind of parts of the story do obviously come together. So yeah, I thought that was interesting, and the Lyle part of the story, yeah, it definitely has like just a really great tone to it. Like I say, the writing style is fantastic. He really has an excellent way with words. And there's also like a bit of a kind of noir vibe to the whole thing, which I really enjoyed. Not that it's like a murder mystery or anything, but it just has that kind of tone. So yeah, I think if you're looking for something, you know, that's more dark literary fiction, it's, you know, not horror. I wouldn't even say it was horror adjacent really. It's, yeah, just more like dark literary fiction. You know, it's got this kind of crime serial killer element to it. And yeah, following a flawed character who is, you know, kind of dealing with his past. He's kind of partly running from it, but also, you know, it still holds a lot over him, and he's trying to, yeah, get on with his life, but there are difficulties. And yeah, there's a bit of the kind of nature versus nurture conversation, you know, in there as well. And, you know, it's quite an ambiguous story too, I will say. So if you definitely need to have your stories wrapped up nicely by the end, then this one might not be for you. I think it worked really well for the story. It's definitely a thinker. And yeah, I thought this one was excellent. Like I say, really well written, and it was a unique and intriguing story. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. So that was everything I read in March. It ended up being a pretty good month. I'm definitely really happy to have been able to finally read TerrorTome. And yeah, it was interesting that I read more newer books this month than I typically do. Like, normally I read more vintage than recent ones, but it was kind of the opposite this month for whatever reason. That was just how it panned out. But April is old school April, so I'm definitely veering more towards vintage books this month, although there are a couple of newer books in there too. But yeah, I have been loving old school April so far. It's been so much fun. Yeah, not just with the books I'm reading, but yeah, watching some old school films and yeah, shenanigans over on Kelsey's channel for the live. And then yeah, just keeping in touch with people through the Discord has been super fun. So there's a lot going on, but it is all wonderful. And yeah, we're only like a week into April already, so there's still plenty more old school April awesomeness to come. Yeah, if you're joining in, I would love to hear about what you've been reading. If you're not joining in, I'd love to hear what you're reading anyway. What was your favourite book that you read in March? Please let me know if you have any recommendations, as always. And yeah, I hope you had a good March and have an even better April. Thank you ever so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video.